Good evening, everybody. This is Jeff from BKJmacTV, and this is the BKJmac podcast experience. Tonight, my heart and prayers are with the people who live up in this building in the Bronx. Basically, the building partially collapsed around, I believe it was 3 or 5 o'clock this afternoon of yesterday, and basically this building had a lot of open violations in it, and this is just an example of these slumlords who are just running these buildings in the inner city and anywhere. Actually, these buildings are like old, and this building apparently was built in 1927. I heard it was 1915, but apparently it was 1927. And this building, looking at it, had partially collapsed, and it's just such dangerous. Like, it just, I don't know, man, it's crazy. So in this article titled "Bronx Building That Partially Collapsed Had 7 Open Violations," Department of Building records say. This article is by Tim McNichols from CBS News New York, December 11, 2023. CBS New York has been digging into the history of the Bronx building that partially collapsed on Monday afternoon and the past violations at the property. The property has 7 open violations according to the Department of Buildings. One of those is from March of 2021 related to the hazardous conditions on the facade. Since 2021, one of the conditions since 2021, so they knew about it. The building is 96 years old, and from a black and white picture obtained by CBS New York, which was taken between 1939 and 1941, not much has been updated on the exterior. So basically, they found a black and white picture from the 30s, and they showed that there was not much updates at all. And this is my issue. This is literally my issue. Like, these building owners, they have these old buildings, and they're not doing what they're supposed to do to maintain them and make sure they're up to date in this time, in this day and age. And because of that, these buildings are like sitting death traps. They could collapse at any moment, and partially that's part of the building collapse. I'm not aware if anybody had passed away. I'm not sure. No report came out of that. But I could certainly say that this is dangerous as hell. And for the many old buildings that's all over Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, Staten Island, and Manhattan, there needs to be a serious level of accountability right now, and make sure that HPD is in there, making sure that these buildings are strong and durable for generations to come. Investigative reporter Tim McNichols found Google Street View images from November of last year that clearly show cracks in the corner of the building where the collapse happened. So there was images already on Google Street Maps. These folks, the owner of this building, submitted their most recent report in March of 2021. That report did find unsafe facade conditions, 7 of them, the mortar that was deteriorating, cracked bricks. There is an active permit, a permit that is valid until next summer. Work was being done on this building as recently as a few days ago. Department of Buildings Commissioner James O., who said earlier today, I can't even explain it, man. All these deteriorating conditions, and they knew about it. I know there's going to be massive lawsuits that's going to be filed against the building owner, because this is certainly very unsafe for residents who were living in this dwelling for many years. McNichols also dug into Department of Transportation records and found permits were issued just Monday for sidewalk construction near the intersection. The permits were to replace the sidewalk and to use construction equipment, including a backhoe. While the permits were issued Monday, they are not valid until later this month, so it's not clear if that work had started in any capacity. The DOB has not said whether that or the facade problems could have contributed to the collapse. So they're not saying the facade problems contributed to the collapse, but we all know the facade problems contributed to the collapse. So let's cut to the chase. I gotta be clear, unsafe facade conditions does not mean an unsafe building, Mr. O said. In November of this year, an inspector wrote about a missing mudstill at the sidewalk shed at the property, saying it could compromise the structural stability, causing a potential collapse, injuring pedestrians and damaging property. That was someone that was an inspector who discovered it. But records say that was for a sidewalk shed at the property, and the city says none of the open violations are for structural hazards on the building itself. Man, I gotta tell you, man, there's just too many things, just too many things, and buildings like that, they need to be closely monitored and closely inspected by the city of New York, because these slumlords that's out there right now, they're charging historic rent, and they're not making sure that these buildings are up to date and up to code for proper dwellings. It just doesn't make sense, and something needs to change, and I think the city needs to take a more active role. That's just my personal opinion. If I was the mayor, if I was the governor, I would create an immediate system that makes sure that enhances the Department of Buildings and HPD to ensure that these slumlords are ensuring that these buildings are well coded and up to date with people's are up to date for people to live in for generations to come. That's what I would do. Anyway, I hope that there are survivors and that there's no casualties from this horrific incident in the Bronx. I send my thoughts and prayers for the people that are displaced after this event, because there are many people that are displaced and that they can't get home. Their stuff is there, their livelihood is at those apartments. So I send my prayers to those people, those residences and stuff like that. So I hope they make it back on their feet. Again, I'm sorry for what they had to go through, and I hope the city and the state holds these slumlord building owners accountable in the near future, and to prevent what happened in the Bronx from ever happening again. Thank you for listening to this podcast episode by BKJmacTV. Peace, love, always one.